Joining me now from Minneapolis is Richard Painter. He is the former White House Chief Ethics Counsel under President George W. Bush. In Valley View, Texas, we have conservative radio talk show host John Gibson. And completing our panel from Washington, D.C., former federal prosecutor Robert Thomas. Thanks all three of you for joining us. Let me begin in Minneapolis. Richard, it almost feels like there are just too many scandals and/or controversies to really list at this point. So you tell me, where should the public's attention be focused rightly right now? What really says this president is worthy of office or he isn't?
Well, this is the most scandal-plagued administration I think we've ever had in American history. But the public needs to focus on the issues that pose the most immediate threat to the public interest. We have a president who behaves at times as if he's psychologically imbalanced. You look at his Twitter feed, it's very disturbing that he's in control of nuclear weapons. Second, he has connections with foreign governments and oligarchs all over the world, financial ties that have not fully been disclosed, some of which are in violation of the United States Constitution's Emoluments Clause. This is a threat that the founders foresaw when they drafted the Constitution. Third, we do have an ongoing pattern of obstruction of justice, an attempt to derail the Russia investigation, and attacks on the federal prosecutors, on the FBI, verbal attacks on the federal courts, and attempts to fire the special prosecutor. That is of great concern to anybody who values the rule of law in our country.
Okay, John Gibson, I mean, critics of Trump have long said that his mental state was an issue, but he was voted in anyway. Do you think the public should genuinely be worried about the White House at this point, or are all these scandals and controversies just detracting from the fact that maybe he is a good president?
Look, this morning the Koreas announced that they're ending the 68-year war. North Korea, Kim Jong-un, and South Korea. There are two Americas, one that supports Donald Trump and one that's represented by Richard Painter. He's running for Senate in Minnesota. It's a very liberal state. The things he says about Trump are very, very popular on the liberal side of this country. But I don't think the people who voted for Donald Trump are at all concerned about what Richard Painter objects to.
Okay, Robert Thomas, do you think this is a president worthy of office at this point?
No, but in fairness, I didn't think he was worthy of office before the election. I think there were a fair number of people in the United States who were very uneasy about Mr. Trump, but hoped that he would act more presidential once in office. That has turned out to be unwise thinking, as to expect a 71-year-old man to suddenly change his behavior and to change his character has not met expectations, let's say. So anyone who is surprised by his conduct in office and the number of scandals that have followed him really has not paid deep attention to the way he's lived his life as a businessman. You know, he had a reputation among his voting base as a savvy businessman, but if you dig into those details, savvy is not the right word to put on that record.
Okay, John, let me go back to you. I mean, the chief concern here, though, is rightly or wrongly, the scandals and controversies that are plaguing the White House are actually crippling his ability to govern. Do you think that's true?
No, I don't think it's true at all. I mean, look at the market, look at the economy. I mean, there's a story in the New York Times this morning about a 17-year-old working in an airplane factory who's never worked in fast food because there's an actual shortage of labor and jobs are booming. I don't think the American public is upset with Donald Trump. I think his opponents are upset with him, and they like to count up these so-called scandals against him like they're counting coup. I'm not surprised that your other two guests don't like Donald Trump. I think it goes without saying. I think they've got lots of objections to him. It's fine for them to have him. If Mr. Painter can get elected to the Senate in Minnesota by attacking Donald Trump, good for him. But I don't think that represents the country at large, and to say so misrepresents reality, I think.
Okay, Richard Painter, if...
Let me say something here.
Go ahead.
I have a right to respond to that. And the vast majority of people who voted for Donald Trump in the general election are good people. They're not people who listen to right-wing talk show hosts on the radio, people like Sean Hannity and Mr. Gibson. They don't listen to that garbage. They don't listen to the right-wing stuff on Breitbart News. That's a minority of people. They're the people who may have helped Donald Trump get the Republican nomination. But the majority of people who voted for Donald Trump wanted change in America. They were right to want change in America. But Donald Trump is not bringing us the change we need. We don't need billionaires taking over our government. We don't need people who are vassals for Vladimir Putin running the White House and trying to obstruct justice. That's not what the American people voted for. So don't confuse the majority of Americans who may have voted, actually a minority because he didn't win the popular vote, but the Americans who voted for Donald Trump in the election were the nut jobs who listen to you on the radio. Nobody wants to hear you anymore. No one wants to hear Breitbart News or Sean Hannity or Sean Hannity. We don't. Well, I don't know whether Michael Cohen is your lawyer too. I don't know what's going on here.
No, Michael Cohen. I don't know Michael
to your
Cohen.
Garbage on the radio.
I know you are running for a Democratic seat in a liberal state, and you're going to go all anti-Trump, and it's probably going to work for you. But don't misrepresent the country.
Let me ask Robert.
But the majority of the country does not support people like you and the alt-right and the nut jobs on right-wing talk radio, even if they voted for Donald Trump.
Okay.
We don't need people like you. We just don't in America. We want a democracy.
Oh, we don't? Okay, so now you're ejecting me from the country? Good, Richard. I'll tell you what, you're going to make
I'm not. You have every First Amendment right to be here. You and the KKK and the rest of them, fine.
But don't think that you are representing the country. You are representing a very liberal state that hates Trump, always hates Trump, is always going to hate Trump, and it's just not going to make any difference.
If we can, gentlemen, let's get back to what's at the heart of the debate that we're having here on this program. And Robert, let me ask you, one of the issues that many Americans complain about now is that an entirely new set of moral standards has now been established because of this president, now for better or for worse. When we look back, for example, at the fact that a president who had a consensual extramarital relationship with an adult but said he didn't was eventually impeached for having said he didn't under oath in front of Congress. Yet 20 years later, we now have a president that can be heard on tape saying he can grab women's genitals because he's rich. He can refuse to hand over his tax returns, for example. Do you think an entirely new set of moral standards has now come into practice because of this president?
Certainly during this presidency, we are dealing with a different set of standards. This president has shown an alarming disregard for the political norms of the country. And that's really important because I don't think it necessarily means that we are going to stay in this place. But in terms of where we are right now, there are many political and cultural values and norms in this country that are under attack. And I hope that it does not carry on past this presidency, but I think we are at risk of that. And you know, our Constitution is revered in the United States, but there's a misconception in our country that the Constitution is somehow magically going to save us. The Constitution is a piece of paper. It only works if the political norms operating in the country agree to abide by it. And as we see more and more of these norms eroding, we are at risk of the Constitution and the rule of law going down with it. And you know, I don't want to be partisan here, and I don't want to be engaged in the kind of back and forth that we just had a few minutes ago. But as a genuinely concerned citizen and as a former law enforcement officer, I'm critical of Democrats and Republicans at various different times. I'm very concerned about what I see the president doing, saying on Twitter, what he says about law enforcement officers, what he says about judges. This is not appropriate. It's not presidential.
Okay, John, let me ask you. I mean, these are facts. You know what, for example, Trump said about grabbing women. He can say it was locker room talk and he was egged on and into it. but that is what he said, and it really does change the moral standard of the presidential office. Does that concern you?
No, it doesn't. I mean, explain to me John Kennedy. I don't hear liberals suddenly attacking the memory of John Kennedy or changing JFK Airport name because we now know of how he behaved in the White House, not before the White House, but in the White House. Look, everybody's saying, okay, we have these examples of Trump saying things that Richard wouldn't say, your other guests wouldn't say, I wouldn't say. Nonetheless, people knew about that when they voted for him, and they are satisfied with his performance. And I think of this stuff of violating political norms, which I'm hearing from one of your guests, and I'm hearing from James Comey, I'm hearing from Richard Painter. It's like parking tickets, handing out tickets for violating political norms. People wanted this guy. I understand the other two guests didn't. I'm sorry they're disappointed, but this is what they've got. And they ought to look at the record of what is actually happening in his presidency rather than digging up violations of political norms.
Okay, Richard Painter, are we changing political norms or eroding basic morals?
This isn't about political norms, it's basically decency. It's basic decency. Sexual assault is not a question of political norms. It is something we should not tolerate in our country. Collusion with the Russians to undermine our democratic system is not something we should tolerate in our country. We have a respectable two-party system, and we have lots of solid conservatives who read respectable publications like the Wall Street Journal, who don't listen to the garbage on right-wing talk radio, who don't listen to Sean Hannity, who shares a lawyer with Donald Trump. We have respectable conservatives who are becoming disgusted with this administration and disgusted with its apologists. And they're destroying the Republican Party. And this is a tragedy for our country, as well as for the Republican Party, that people keep on shilling for a president who is clearly in violation of the law, is obstructing justice, and appears to be mentally unstable. Just look at his Twitter feed and ask yourself, is this a stable man, someone you would trust with nuclear weapons? The answer is no.
Okay. John, let me ask you, I mean, we're having this debate off the back of the release of James Comey's new book. Many people have been saying that this is it. This expose is the most damaging to the president by far. But actually, we saw, Michael Wolff write something similar with very top sources at the White House, according to him, in Fire and Fury. And that arguably left the president no worse off. So what do you make of Comey's book? Will this change anything for this administration?
Look, let's get something straight about Comey's book. It's not my opinion, but opinion of people at the major networks and at the major newspapers. There's nothing new in this book except James Comey's impressions, personal impressions about Donald Trump, and James Comey's opinions about how Donald Trump is violating legal and political norms, as your other two guests have talked about. This is James Comey setting himself up to be the holiest of holier than thous, condemning the president, going to political war with him, and he should expect tweets firing back at him. And the fact that he thinks he ought to be able to attack the president without being attacked himself tells you what kind of fragile figure he is. Look, this is a political, Comey said it himself. He doesn't want Trump impeached. He wants him defeated in the next election. That's what this is all about. It's what Mr. Painter is all about. It's about Comey's all about, and it's what most of the attacks on Trump from the left are all about.
Okay, I mean, that is, you bring up something.
That's not right. This is about our country and our democracy.
You bring up something.
That's what it's about, our country and our democracy. And Robert Mueller is the one who's going to take care of this, not Comey.
How is he undermining democracy?
Is that a serious question?
President Trump is continuing to obstruct justice, trying to fire the special prosecutor after he fired James Comey. Yes, he is. And he has allowed his campaign colluded with the Russians to subvert our election, and they are trying to throw out the special prosecutor. There are Republicans in this Justice Department he's attacking. Rod Rosenstein, Jeff Sessions. Yes, it was subverted by Vladimir Putin. We know that.
That still hasn't been
We
proven.
know that.
The
We're not
collusion
stupid.
has
That
not been
Vladimir
proven.
Putin interfered in our election.
Vladimir Putin, you are making an unfounded charge.
I'll tell you what, we're down to our last minute. Robert
That Vladimir
Thomas, you've been
Putin
waiting to get
interfered
in
in the
there.
American election. Wow.
Yeah, interfered is different than subverted. You use the word subverted. There's no proof the election was subverted.
Well, you can explain to your right-wing listeners the difference between interfere and subvert.
For political purposes. You ought to be ashamed.
Okay, I'll tell you what, we're down to our last minute here, and I wanted Robert Thomas to get his final words
and I'm not ashamed.
Robert Thomas,
President
go ahead.
Trump ought to be ashamed of associating with Vladimir Putin and his cronies.
Okay, Richard Painter, that collusion is yet to be proven. Unfortunately for your campaign there. But go ahead, Robert Thomas. Let me get some final words from you.
There's no debate that Russia interfered with the election and attacked our country. The only question is and what is being investigated is the extent to which the Trump campaign coordinated with that. There's already quite a lot of evidence based on the indictments that we've seen and the convictions that we've seen that the campaign was happy to receive this assistance from Russia. The issue of whether President Trump was involved is what remains to be determined. But when people say we should not be using the term collusion, that's sort of a term of art that's just gotten going on the media. The real issue is conspiracy. Was there a criminal conspiracy to coordinate with the Russians? But there's zero ambiguity that the Russians attempted to and did attack our democracy successfully in disturbing the election process.
But unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up this debate for this edition of The Newsmakers. I'd like to thank all three of you so much for joining us.